Besides Everything Everywhere All at Once, Pearl is the second A24 movie I've ever seen, and it is the first horror movie I've ever seen in a long time. I don't really watch horror movies, but it is spooky season, so I thought I would do more horror movies this month, because I don't think I've ever really done one on my channel. Because despite appearances, though you can't see me, I am not a big scary man. I am a soft, gentle baby boy who wants to be held, and I scare easy. So I don't watch horror stuff very much. When I first sort of read the brief summary of Pearl, I was like, how are they going to make a farm girl who wishes she was an actress from a rural area scary? Like, how could you possibly make this a horror movie? And then I thought about it and realized, no, this is the perfect horror movie, because there is nothing more frightening on this planet than a white woman who feels she is owed something and not getting it. You psycho bitch, you better leave that goose alone. See, what I tell you, nothing scary in this world than a white woman who feels like she's owed something. Cause like, what the fuck did that goose just do? Except mind its business.
Supper's ready, Daddy.
Oh shit, I didn't know they had Jimmy Carter in this film. I completely respect Pearl having these like larger than life dreams of becoming a dancer, blah blah blah, and leaving the farm behind, and her pretty controlling mother and vegetable of a father, and just leaving her life. Completely understand. But, and maybe this is from a place of hindsight because I live in the year 2024, I hope she doesn't truly think her life will be somehow magically much better as a woman just because she's famous in 1918. It sucked for them back then too. Like, historically for women, it has been pretty ass throughout history, but especially in Hollywood if you were famous. Like, Harvey Weinstein was for decades just terrorizing women. Now imagine back in 1918 where there was just like hundreds of Harvey Weinsteins just harassing women. Fuck yeah, Pearl. Pearl's the shit now. She knows how to fucking party. I want to fucking hang out with Pearl. She's just chilling midday watching a movie and drinking liquid morphine. She knows how to fucking relax. Don't go anywhere with him, Pearl. Men in the 1918s used to just hit women all the time. It was like a national pastime for them. And then you legally just couldn't get divorced, so you just had to be like a punching bag for 40 years until he died.
You ought to take pride in that.
You know what? Never mind. I would also follow him anywhere with those soft baby blues. I guess country girls really do just gotta make do. I wish someone would kiss me that passionately. He can't consent. Get off of him. One thing I found interesting and have noticed so far is that Pearl never interacts with her mother in German. She obviously understands it because several times throughout the movie so far, her mother has spoken to her in complete German and she's responded correctly in English. Now, this might be just me assuming a red door is deeper than a red door, but I think this does show something about Pearl as a character. Not only does it show that, like, on some level she hates her mom, but she hates who she is in some way. She wants no association with that part of herself. She wants no association with the farm, and because she has those connections to both of those things through German, because obviously she is of German descent, she won't even speak it. That's how deep the self-hatred Pearl has for herself, but also the hatred she has for her life. I refuse to believe that a man who only has to walk 3 feet to do his job would always be this well dressed 24/7. Like, I stream and I don't even put on pants half the time. What do you mean you're in an entire outfit just to walk 2 feet?
I'm what more civilized people refer to as bohemian.
I don't know what that is.
Run. It means he's homeless. I knew this freaky ass dude was gonna put on some porn. Why are men so goddamn weird? That dude's a freak.
If only they would just die.
Bitch, just leave. I understand feeling like you have to take care of your family. Completely get that. But if you're starting to have thoughts like, I wish these motherfuckers would just die already, then you should just leave. But again, it's 1918 and she's a woman. She would probably get like the next town over before something happened to her. Women can't have bank accounts. They can't vote right now. Like, there's nothing she could do. She could get all the way to New York in a big city and she would be able to do nothing. This man's so freaky, it's gross. Like, go play in traffic, you creep. I know I said I'd follow you anywhere, dream boy, but go to hell. You're a weirdo. Yeah, baby, I'd love to see you in porn. Ugh.
It'd be easier for me if I didn't feel like I was abandoning you.
This bitch is nuttier than a shithouse rat. What do you mean you are completely comfortable killing your father and will have zero regrets about it as long as you don't feel like you're abandoning your family when you leave? Just leave. Like, what is the logic of that? So you'll feel bad about abandoning them, but not about murdering them? What? Oh wow, this is actually a really interesting scene because earlier in the film, she is reading a letter from Howard and is excited to someday be back with Howard again because he's off to war, blah, blah, blah. But now her disdain for her life, everyone in her life, and how she just wants something different than living on a farm and being married at probably like 18, 19 has turned into just this nothing short of fury and disgust at everyone that is a representation of her old life. So she hates her husband now, she hates her mother, she hates her father, but she hated those two previously. She at least loved Howard in some way, I think, or at least excited about him. But now she has Howard, who is this sort of like handsome, attractive male figure now. So like she doesn't need a Howard in a sense that like she doesn't need her sexual desires, I guess, are being fulfilled in that sense. Like she's being fulfilled in some way romantically, though it may be a bit of delusion because he obviously just wants to sleep with her. Regardless, I think her crushing the egg is just like this pivotal point in which we see her, like this is where her degrading starts. Because in like, I feel like a lot of movies with characters like Pearl, they will have the opposite of a hero's journey in the sense where it's like a hero's journey is like, this is them before, then there's like this sort of like cataclysmic event, and then they are changed in some way for the better 9 times out of 10. In a hero's journey, they are typically better or different in some way after going through their trial and tribulation. With characters like Pearl, they have this like sort of catalyst that sets them off and makes them worse. Like they were like at the beginning, they had this point in which they were quote unquote normal, or at least like they are accustomed to their existence and their life as it is. But then whether through an outside force or an internal force, they snap. Like they completely go haywire and now they are worse off for it. And I think that is always like interesting, the sort of dichotomy of like the hero's journey and like maybe even like the, I guess you could call this the villain's journey if that's a thing. But yeah, like the sort of villain's journey of like being one way at the beginning of the film, something of an internal or an external force happening to them, and then they are now a problem for everyone else in the film. This is super minute, and I think that's the beauty of acting, but I want to give props to the actor who plays the father. The entire movie, he's basically emotionless and it's just breathing. His eyes don't even really move the entire movie. It's essentially just expressionless. He's a vegetable, for lack of a better word. But this scene where Pearl fights with her mother and then eventually just leaves her in the basement to suffer and presumably die at some point, this is the most expressive I've ever seen him, and I think that's phenomenal acting, because like he is still like immobilized, but like the terror in his eyes is palpable. His breathing, the labored breathing, like just the subtlety in which like he is showing terror through this quadriplegic man who can do nothing but just watch as his daughter drags his wife's lifeless and dying body down to the basement and then runs away, is some of the most beautiful acting I have ever witnessed.
I know because I feel things very deeply.
I wonder if that's what her mom was talking about, because during dinner her mom was saying like she has some sort of like sickness. She can see that something is deeply wrong with her, and obviously the audience knows that as well. Like one of the first scenes you see Pearl, she kills a goose pretty easily, which you could write off as just she lives on a farm, she's used to killing animals, whatever. But obviously as it progresses, you see that something is definitely wrong with Pearl that isn't just sort of like a cabin fever sort of I want to get off this farm. And during the last dinner before her mom was basically burned alive, it is the first time the mother acknowledges it. Like she just kind of like brushes Pearl's personality off as like whatever, you know what I mean, like maybe like a young girl in her delusions or whatever. But that is the first instance of the mother being like, there is something deeply wrong with you that I haven't acknowledged and I tried to like put to the side and ignore, but no longer will I ignore it because it would essentially sit on my conscience for the rest of my life to allow you out into society. I low-key want to feel bad for Pretty Boy, but also at the same time, this is kind of his fault. Like obviously thinking with your penis doesn't mean you deserve to be murdered by a crazy white woman, but also, brother, come on. This goes to show that you shouldn't sleep with everyone you find attractive, because he was never interested in Pearl. She was always just a sexual conquest. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. Just be honest and truthful, but you should also be aware of who you're like dealing with. Them yeeks came at a cost, boy. The only person who I definitely do feel bad for is the father. He is just trapped in his own body, forced to watch everything happen slowly around him as they unravel. And he is physically unable to stop or do anything. The movie appears to be coming to this culmination of Pearl finally going to that audition. And while I could definitely be misremembering, I think it is interesting that at no point have we seen Pearl dance. I don't think we've seen Pearl dance, which I think is in a way kind of phenomenal, because her entire motivation is to leave this farm and dance and be this like big star. It is her reason for existing. It is her motivation the entire movie, and is in a way the cause of her mental decay. And yet, to my knowledge, not once have we seen, if she's even any good, never seen her practice anything. How poetic would it be that she's essentially maimed her mother, is presumably about to kill her father, and has killed a man and ruined her marriage also. Like, that's the least important thing of her sins, quote unquote. But how poetic would it be for her to do all of this just for her to be terrible at dancing? And it was all just this delusion that she had any chance. Hell, even further than a delusion, because like you can practice and become good at dancing, but we've never even seen her practice. Well, at this point in the film, it is damn near impossible to feel actually bad for Pearl. I can sympathize a little bit because she has had this delusion that she is special, that she is meant for something greater, and yet that has been shattered. And as someone in a space that is very creative and often very humbling, I can understand on some level. Everyone wants to be special, and I think everyone is inherently special. Like, everyone has unique experiences that they can share and like put into art, blah blah blah, whatever. But when it comes to creativity and just being in a creative space, you need to be delusional. Like, I need to, every time I edit a video and post it, I need to believe that it's going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, that it's going to bring more joy to people's hearts than Queen Elizabeth dying. I have to. Otherwise, what's the point in some way? So I think you should be a little bit delusional when you're in a space that requires you to continue to make something until something happens from that creation. But that delusion should come from a place or foundation of confidence. Otherwise, you're just silly, kind of. And Pearl is just silly. And sure, we could chalk it up as like they didn't have time to show it or anything like that, but for the most part we have no reason to assume that Pearl wanted it more than anybody else. Pearl didn't practice. She wasn't in a gym shooting threes. We have no reason to believe that Pearl tried any harder or worked any harder than anyone else. She just wanted it more, but that wanting it more didn't translate to anything beyond making it everyone else's problem that she didn't have it yet, which in a weird way I'm going to give props to Pearl for. It's difficult to believe in yourself. I doubt myself all the time, but I genuinely believe that YouTube and streaming is the only thing I want to do and am meant to do beyond like my other creative pursuits. But other than that, this is it. This is all I want. So I have no choice other than to believe in myself on some level. The foundation of like I have nothing else, you know, but I still struggle all the time to believe in myself because I will see like other videos blow up or question myself all the time. So it is honestly genuinely admirable that Pearl was like, I want it more than anything in the entire world, so I'm going to believe in myself that I'm a star, that I'm going to be the greatest ever. But maybe on some level she didn't really believe in herself, because if her belief in herself can be shattered this easily by one no, maybe she was faking that belief. Maybe dancing for her was just a way to get off the farm and she never really wanted it in the first place.
Please, I'm a
Holy shit, if they didn't give her an Oscar for this performance, no one deserves an Oscar, because she plays crazy so motherfucking well. And oh my god, like, that is the best ugly crying I have ever seen in a movie. I think this pig is an interesting representation of the general decay of Pearl's mental. I think. Like, it is increasingly just getting worse and worse and decaying, just like her mental state. I think that goes to show that, like, dancing was never that important to Pearl in the first place. It is what dancing represented, which was leaving the farm. Because if you genuinely have a dream and believe in yourself, even if you don't believe in yourself, if you genuinely have a dream of something that you want to do and accomplish, one no isn't going to stop you. Being told no and failing over and over, while disheartening and can take a toll on you, you're going to do that. You're going to do that dream in some way, shape, or form. It's why people who do art or anything creative, really, sure, maybe they start out having lofty goals, but not everyone can be insanely famous, like painter or whatever. It's why a lot of people just want to be able to do their thing and live sustainably from it. So a lot of people will just like become art teachers, and that's an admirable job. There's nothing wrong with that. Not everyone needs to be uber famous or even wants to be uber famous. It's just about being able to do the thing that brings you the utmost joy and close your eyes and take comfort in that. And that's absolutely okay. But it was never about achieving dreams for Pearl. It was never even a dream for Pearl. It was just, I need to get the fuck off this farm. But even so, it was never really about that either, because like she could have left at any moment. I mean, she couldn't have got far because it's 1918. God damn, this is a good ass monologue. Shit. You really get a sense of just how frightening she is in a way by how her sister-in-law is just slowly regretting her choice of allowing her to talk, and everything is just coming out, and we're just seeing Pearl just unravel quicker and quicker. It's almost as if this is the final nail in the coffin for Pearl, and she obviously couldn't go back to her previous life because most of those folks are dead, but that this is a final thing that is going to cement that Pearl is not normal. She was never normal, and this is it. This is it for her. There's no going back, so there has to be something dramatic coming up. There has to be something on the other side of this for Pearl. Otherwise, like, what was the point of anything? I wish I had the words or the training in, like, film to describe just how powerful and amazing this scene is in this movie. Pearl goes on this phenomenal monologue about how she just has wanted her entire life to feel safe. She just wants to feel safe and comfort and happiness, and her going down to the basement and wrapping her dead mother's arms around herself as she has this delusion of being sang to, and her going through the entire motions of bringing in the pig covered in maggots, wheeling her father out, brushing her dead mother's hair, because while Pearl is missing something internally, maybe she's a sociopath or whatever, she understands that it's too late. She can't go back to, like, now that her dreams have been crushed, she can't go back. And it is so powerful to finally hear Pearl for the first time say something in German, because the entire movie she only replies in English to her mother. Even when her mother is talking to her in German, she refuses to speak German to her mother, almost as though her knowledge of it or being German is a curse, because it reminds her of her mother. And now, in a way, she has accepted it, because, and this is proven because before she kills Mitzi's like, I'll do whatever you want, I'll do, just please don't kill me. And Pearl is like, it no longer matters what I want, I just have to make the best of what I have. And pure phenomenal. Like, I can't describe that scene and how it like is just so good to finally and have this culmination of the entire movie reach this point where Pearl finally says something in German back to her mother, and it's "I love you," in response to her delusion while she's being embraced in her dead mother's arms. Absolute cinema. That was a great movie. Like, there's no better way to describe it. And I'm not the biggest fan of like classical horror movies of like jump scares and blah blah blah, because I get scared kind of easily. But psychological stuff like Pearl, and even movies that do it better than Pearl, I love from the bottom of my heart. Like thrillers like that, Pearl is so good. That's such a satisfying ending that I find it difficult to really find the vocabulary to describe how awesome I think it is to have this movie sort of build up and end the way that it did, to have Pearl start out like killing a goose and sets the tone for how off how off she is as a human being. It like sets the tone for the entire movie, and then watch her unravel more and more and more, just to end it on Howard, who is in his own way a villain, because as Pearl said in her monologue, Howard likely knew how much she hated her life, but his wants was more important. You know what I mean? Howard is in a way the center villain of the film in this roundabout way, because it's explained that Howard, it comes from a wealthy family, but like all of it is just to get away, in a way to spite his father, because he didn't have to go off to war. He could have got a doctor's note like his sister says, and he could have stayed home and been with Pearl and kind of been a break to her madness in a way, but he didn't, because it was what he wanted. He originally became a farmhand because it was to spite his father and get away from his rich boy life. Howard is selfish and didn't care about anything else other than himself, so why should anything good come back to him? Sure, like, he isn't outwardly bad, but he is the catalyst that sparks the fuel that is Pearl. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, like, there was instances of other things not helping, like her mother's abuse wasn't necessarily physical, but verbal abuse, which is still very much abuse. You know, her mom relying on her and forcing her to take care of her, you know, disabled father. And Pearl was never necessarily good or bad. She was just tortured, and nothing was there to sort of like scapegoat her pain spiraling into being something else that everyone else had to deal with. Like, everyone else around her failed Pearl and didn't see either the warning signs or didn't give enough of a shit about her to try and sit her down and get her some fucking help. But the fact that the movie eventually came kind of full circle, where Pearl was like, this is my hell and I have to live in it, is great. I don't know how to describe it. You know what I mean? Like, and sure, maybe it isn't for everyone necessarily, but I genuinely liked it. The fact that like it all culminated in this like big scene of like Pearl saying and finally speaking German to her dead mother is I don't know. Like, I don't know how to describe how cool I think that is, because they made sure that Pearl never ever spoke German. She always replied in English. But now that she is trying to find this sort of sense of safety in her dead mother's arms, she's like, yeah, Mom, I love you, but it's too late. Like, your mom's gone now. Your father's gone. Hell, you killed your husband's sister. And I like the ending because, like, you know, and I'm not normally a fan of, like, this isn't open-ended necessarily, but it is pretty open-ended in the sense that, like, you don't know what happens to Pearl afterwards. Like, no one knows what, like, I mean, she likely went to a mental asylum where they, like, lobotomized her. But all in all, like, it's still pretty open-ended, and I normally don't like open-ended stories. But I think this one is done just so well to have that, like, big montage of her setting up the dinner table and her mania just reaching this sort of peak, and then the lull of Howard coming home. Because compared to like her having this sort of like mania scene of like the sort of like the double lens thing, like the double-sided thing of like she's doing two things at once, blah blah blah, and all of that as she's setting up the dinner table and getting everything ready for Howard to come home, it is almost a letdown to just have this sort of like final scene of just Howard just walking through the doors and seeing everything. It's it almost leaves you with this feeling of that's it, that's it. Like, he just comes home and she's just smiling, but yeah, that's it. Like, what else, what more do you want? What more can be done? What more can be told to you that this woman Pearl is sick? Like, she is just a sick woman who has been let down by everyone essentially, and Howard just comes home to sickness and he doesn't deserve more. He doesn't deserve anything. Howard's entire character is running away from perfection, essentially, like running away from the notion of like this perfect life. If Howard had been born like 100 years later, he would have been that white dude who does everything essentially to just erase the fact that he came from a rich, privileged life. He would be Chet Hanks, essentially. But I digress. Howard constantly tried to escape this perfect life that he had. Well, now that you're here, like, you are now in the thick of a not perfect life. You know, your sister's dead, your wife is nuttier than a shithouse rat, and you can't escape it. You know what I mean? Like, he was trying to find something or escape something. Maybe that's why he went off to war. But now, that's it, brother. Like, you're stuck. Anyway, I digress. Great movie. Like, I genuinely really like this movie. I plan to watch more movies for Spooky Month, so look out for those. They'll probably be a lot shorter because I'm lazy and editing takes a long time, but whatever. If you liked it and made it this far, please like and subscribe, and maybe leave a comment if you think I'm a cutie pie. Anyway, thank you. See you later.